The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
You know, we're loaded up with guests today. I don't usually have 3 guests on, but that's just the way things worked out today. Trinity Rodman, one of the stars of the D.C. Spirit as they close out the regular season on Sunday. She'll join us to talk about that game. They're trying to set an attendance record for that and try to stay in the playoff picture. They're in now. If they lose, it's somewhat in doubt whether they get in. If they win, they will be hosting a playoff game. So we'll talk to her at 9:30. Chris Cordova is with a golf event that's going to be taking place at Congressional next week. It's for veterans, military veterans who are suffering from PSTD, I think, whatever it is. And we'll talk to him about what's going on at Congressional next week on that. And also we will preview the Ravens as we do every Friday. Ravens preview at 10:30. Kevin Osteicher will join us. He is with Ravens Wire and Locked On Ravens as they try to get things right in London. Didn't quite get it done in Pittsburgh. Scored only 10 points. Kind of blew that game. They kind of blew the Colts game. They could easily be a 5-0 team, but they're 3-2, and they are favored on Sunday. That'll be a 9:30 in the morning kickoff, meaning that we will start our coverage here at 9 a.m. I also want to talk a little bit about Walt Garrison, who passed away the other day at the age of 79. You'd probably have to be over 60 to remember seeing him play. He was Cowboys running back, and he was involved in, I would say, one of the 5 biggest plays in Washington Redskins history. It was not in a playoff game. It was a regular season game, and it was a Monday Night Football game. And he was the one who came up on the short end of this play as he was wrestled to the ground by Ken Houston at the 1-yard line to preserve a 14-7 win. And I'll remember that coming up at 10 o'clock. We got some audio from that. And Garrison he wasn't just a Dallas Cowboy. He was a true cowboy. He was a guy who participated in rodeos and was really good at it. And ultimately ended his football career because he suffered a knee injury in rodeo. But he was okay with that, played 9 years, and went on to maybe even a better career in rodeo. And I remember meeting him a couple of times, and there was nothing phony about him. He walked around in jeans and cowboy hats and boots and had that twang, and he made a lot of money over the years selling Skoal. Used to be able to do that on television, smokeless tobacco. Just a pinch between your cheek and gum. And he was like their main spokesman and passed away at the age of 79. We'll talk about him. Also some baseball here, and let's jump on with that right away. The Phillies, as you know, advanced last night. They knocked out the 104-win Braves in the best of 5-game series, did it in 4 games, 3-1. The final last night as Bryce Harper is back in the National League Championship Series and possibly headed back to the World Series if they can take care of Arizona. That gets underway this weekend. And you know, you look at what happened in the playoffs. You lost the Braves, who had the most wins. You lost the Dodgers, who had the second most wins. And you lost the Orioles, who had the third most wins. None of those 3 teams advanced to the championship series of their leagues. And you know, there's a lot of discussion about how the playoffs are set up and whether it's fair or not, and is it fair to reward a team for winning a division by 5 days off when they don't have that throughout the season? It's tough to get back on the horse after you've been resting for a while. You know, they're in a rhythm of playing games. The most you ever have off is 1 day, not 5. And it's just an odd thing. And, you know, do you look at this and say, well, we're really not rewarding the winning teams during the regular season for doing this? You know, because baseball, for many years, for most of its history, was based on the idea that you slogged through the schedule. You did the best you could in every game. You counted them up at the end. And if you had more wins than any other team in your league or your division, you were in the playoffs. But, you know, for the majority of the history of baseball, like the first 100 years, it was only an American League pennant winner and a National League pennant winner, and you played in the World Series. Well, now you're up to 14 teams, and you have to have the various rounds. I guess the wild card they thought wasn't fair enough, so now it's the best of 3 before you get to the division series, and then that's best of 5, and then the American League Championship Series, National League, a best of 7 before you get to the World Series. So it's become more like college basketball, but even in college basketball, in the Final Four, you'll generally see at least 2 of the best teams in the country. Sometimes 3, and sometimes even you get 4 number 1 seeds. That happens. It's not happening this year. And Rob Manfred was asked about, what can you do about this yesterday, and he said, it's only year 2. I'm sort of of the view you need to give something a chance to work out. I know some of the higher-seeded teams didn't win. I think you think about some of those teams and where they were and the explanations, the 5-day layoff. I think we'll reevaluate in the offseason like we always do and think about if we have the format right, meaning they're not going to do anything about it, And I've thought of various scenarios. Actually, Mike Greenberg had an idea which isn't maybe as crazy as it sounds. Greenberg says you take the Dodgers or you take the Braves, okay, and you give them the bye, so you put them into the divisional series. They get to host that. They're the home field advantage for that. But you give them, going into the series, a win. So the Dodgers would start their divisional playoff series, which would be best of 5, with a victory. They only got to win 2 more to win the series. The Braves, the same thing, the Orioles. And that way, you even it out a little bit, or you give more of an advantage, I should say, to a team that did have a great regular season. I don't know. It's a thought. There's that. I was also thinking about this. Now, it takes away teams playing on their home field, and there's revenue involved in that and so forth. But more and more, the model for professional sports is tilted towards television. Television is what drives the bus. I was thinking about possibility of what happens in the college series, the College World Series, where you have double elimination. So, what if you put a team in there and you gave them, however they set it up with first-round buys and everything. But if you lose your first game, you're not out. You get to go into the losers bracket, I guess, and you can emerge from that and still win. And maybe that might spice things up. But the problem you're going to have is you're not going to be able to eliminate the number of playoff teams. That's where the money is. So, and this was collectively bargained with the union. So it's not like the owners were able to shove this down their throat. So they've got to come up with something, I think, so that you don't have these teams that had great regular seasons sitting home and saying, what happened here? Like the Orioles, 101 wins, and then boom, they're out. They're done. The Braves, 104 wins. It goes 4 games. They're done. So it's just a thought, but it does not seem to be working as well as it should be, particularly for a sport like baseball, where regular season used to mean everything. Little football here. Jack Del Rio, a little bit prickly yesterday. Now, I've been watching his news conferences all 4 years that he's been here. And he's, pretty even-keeled with the media. I know he got himself in some hot water a couple of years ago where he referred to the insurrection at the Capitol as a dust-up. He was fined for that and stopped talking politics with the media. But yesterday, when he held his news conference, and I realized this is the first time he's done that in 2 weeks. They didn't have one before the Bears game because they played on Thursday night. So this is the first time he's spoken to the media since before the Philadelphia game, which was, no bargain defensively. They managed to get it to overtime, but defensively they gave up 34 points and a ton of yardage. And now Del Rio has had to bench the first-round pick that they brought in to create turnovers. Turnovers are problems. Okay, we'll draft Emmanuel Forbes from Mississippi State. He's got the NCAA record for most pick sixes, and he's got 1 interception this year. But he's been burnt toast the last 2 weeks, and now he's on the bench, and Del Rio says this about Emmanuel Forbes.
I'm just going to say it hasn't gone the way he would like or we would like. And so we'll just keep working at it. I believe in the young man, and he's obviously had a rough start. Hasn't been as productive as we'd like him to be, and I know how much he'd like to be himself. So just got to keep working. That's what you do in this business. There's no shortcut. There's no easy way out. You just have to work, and that's what we want him to do.
Now, a reporter will often ask this question, and when you think about it, it really is kind of foolish. And the answer that Del Rio gives here is actually appropriate for it. It's, well, what do you say to him? What do you do to coach him up? Here's Del Rio.
Well, you can't really save anybody with words. It just comes down to, working. And I think you build confidence through your preparation and through your practice habits and those types of things. So that's what we'll stress and look to continue to build confidence in all of our guys.
All right. The offseason was spent, and they talked about this throughout training camp, Del Rio, over and over and over. We know we have to start fast. We know we can't put our team behind. Well, what have they done the last 3 weeks? They've put their team behind. They managed to make a game of it in Philadelphia. The other two were lopsided losses, both of them at home to Buffalo and then last week to Chicago. So the questions continue.
You stressed all preseason starting fast. Why hasn't that happened?
Not because I didn't stress it. It's. I mean, you look to do it, and then you got to go out and you execute. I mean, that's the whole deal. You put your plan together. You work on different things. You stress different things, and then you go out and compete. And then it's there. We basically stick our necks out, and when it goes well, we're excited and we move on to the next one. And when it doesn't go well, we're disappointed. And pissed and those kind of things. But the reality is you have to move on to the next one. So that's where we are. We're moving on in our preparation, in our focus. It can't be whether it was really good or really bad. It cannot remain on what was. It has to go forward, and that's where we are right now.
Now, this is the prickly Del Rio. This is a side that we haven't seen too much of since he came here with Ron Rivera in 2020. Ben Standing writes for The Athletic. He's at all the news conferences, covers the games, does a great job of covering the team. He should have come equipped with a little more backing than he had in pursuing this, but this is Del Rio kind of defending his guy, but his guy hasn't been very good. Cody Barton, who's been kind of clobbered at the linebacker position, at the mic man, as they call it, the man in the middle. This is Del Rio with Ben Standing yesterday in a conversation about Cody Barton.
With regards to Cody Barton, you've said you've been okay with what he's shown so far. Where are you at with him, I guess, now? And because obviously you look at some of the information out there, and there seems to be some missing part there as to what he's bringing to the table. What are you seeing that maybe others are not?
What do you mean a missing part? I'm not understanding.
Just that, maybe it just hasn't played up to the level that, people are hoping for if he's going to come in and be the starting Mike. So I guess to that end, what are you seeing that maybe others are not?
What people are, who am I answering to? Which people? And what?
The world at large. I guess.
And what are they looking at?
Sure.
So
well, I guess
I like the way he prepares and competes. So I think he'll continue to get better, impact us in a positive way.
And I guess this is another linebacker question. A lot of talk about Khaleke Hudson starting at that last game last year and in the offseason about how he's improved. Obviously, another guy hasn't been able to get on the field. Is that just a matter of only using two linebackers at most and just hasn't been space for him to get out there?
I'd say that's pretty accurate.
Ooh, a little frosty there. Now, Ben should have been able to say, well, this person says this or these numbers say that. But the sentiment is the same, that he hasn't been as good as they hoped, and he's part of a defense that's leading the league in points given up, 32 points a game. I mean, you just can't have that. And so this is sort of like what George Michael used to do. George Michael would he never take responsibility for being critical. So he would say to a coach or a player, "Hey, people are saying out there. But again, I felt that was as prickly as we've seen Del Rio in the 4 years he's been in Washington. All right, back to the Orioles. The Orioles held their end-of-season news conference yesterday. Mike Elias, Brandon Hyde, Elias the GM, Hyde the manager, talking about where they go from here, a team that won 101 games and were swept out of the playoffs. They're looking to do what the Braves have done with their players and signed some of these young guys to long-term extensions. Whether they could do it or not remains to be seen, but you'd like to have long-term stability with Adley Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson. One of the things that they've been able to sell the Braves players on is, hey, this is a great place to play. We're going to be in the mix every year. And over the long haul, it might cost you a little less in salary, but you're going to be able to win more. Maybe you get more in endorsements. You play to win the game, as Herman Edwards would say. So maybe you want to stick around here. They're going to attempt to do that. I don't know how successful they're going to be, but Elias says we are very focused on keeping this organization as successful and healthy as possible within the constraints of reality. Obviously, we have players here that we love. As part of the calculus of keeping this franchise healthy is pursuing or examining opportunities to possibly keep these guys longer. We shall see. He's a Yale guy and very eloquent, and I thought expressed what happened this season and put it in perspective in a very good way yesterday.
Well, I wish we made a better playoff run. The regular season, 101 wins in the American League East. Probably we were dreaming of that when we started the rebuild. It seemed impossible, and the people here pulled it together, and I think it's just a historic achievement. This group of players, regardless of where else they go in their careers and their lives, I hope that the city of Baltimore remembers this group for kind of reminding the world that this is Baltimore and we do baseball here, and that's my goal going forward. As long as I'm responsible for keeping that being the case, and it's the guys in that room that really made it happen.
It's hard to imagine this, but yes, Baltimore once was the baseball city in America. They did it right, the Oriole way. And for over a decade, they were in the mix all the time. That run that they had, 1966, they won the World Series. They went back to the World Series as heavy favorites in 1969 after winning 110 games and suffered one of the biggest upsets in the history of sports when the Miracle Mets beat them, but they came back the next year and beat the Reds, and then they went back the following year and went 7 games with the Pirates. They were back in the World Series again in 1979, made the playoffs a couple of times in between, lost in 7 to the Pirates again, went back in 1983 and won the World Series. And then they were still a good team into the mid-'90s. They won the division a couple of times and played playoff series and all that. Or maybe not division, but they 1 year wild card, maybe 1 year division. But they went back-to-back to the playoffs with Davey Johnson in the mid-'90s. And, they had recently as 2014, they were in the ALCS. But they had some really rough years in between. And now you're not only looking at a team that was really good this year, but could be good for a long, long time. And I think Mike Elias deserves a lot of credit for that. And to reestablish Baltimore, which plays in one of the great stadiums in the major leagues, as a great baseball team and a great baseball town, I think is really an important thing. And I think he expressed that very well. As for Brandon Hyde, Brandon Hyde got some criticism for the way he handled the pitching and so forth in the series against the Rangers, but more than likely he is going to be named American League Manager of the Year, and had this this kind of humorous look at that yesterday.
That's nice. I'm still pissed, to be honest with you. So I don't, I'm disappointed, and I mean, I don't really read a ton, and I try to keep my focus. I mean, when the season's going on, honestly, like all I'm worried about is that night's game. And so what's happening around me, sometimes I'm not aware of, or I'm being told, but I'm just trying to get better every day, honestly, and I'm just trying to put our team in position to win as much as I possibly can. So, whatever people say, they say, and if it's nice things, that's great.
Yeah, and that's a nice, modest answer. The thing to keep an eye on with Brandon Hyde is if you go through this next year, have a great regular season, and you have another flame out in the playoffs, do they go in the direction of bringing in a more experienced manager? that will be something. And, Mike Elias, that was his first hire. He said, okay, I need somebody who's going to go through the pain here because we're going to rebuild here. This is a bad team right now, and it's going to get even worse for the next few years while we build up draft capital and beef up the farm system. And Brandon Hyde had an interesting background. He had been on Joe Madden's staff when the Cubs won the World Series in 2016, but he had also been a player personnel director. So he understood, this was Miami, he understood about prospects and bringing them along. And in most cases, when you have a manager like that, he's out the door by the time you're ready to win. He's still there, and he had a wonderful regular season. But it's all about, winning in the postseason. And if there's another year like this, will they say, well, we really don't want to waste this great lineup that we have here with the manager who's, may not be qualified to take them through in the playoffs. So far, he is winless in postseason play. But he's got hope, and he's got this. And he understands this too. They needed a number one guy. They need a horse. I mean, you look at the teams that have advanced, and they've got those veteran number one guys. Hyde, very realistic about this when asked, well, can Kyle Bradish be that guy?
I think it's got an opportunity to be a number one. I think when you talk about number one starters, it's a handful in this league. True number ones. And it's hard to be a true number one. So, does he have the ability to? Absolutely. Does Grayson have the ability to? Absolutely. They're ways away. You know what I mean? They're ways away. A true number one is a guy that is going to stop any sort of losing streak, a guy that's going to, go dominate a team in postseason, like those type of guys. And those are hard to find. But those two guys have the stuff and the ability to be that type of guy.
Yeah, and the question is, who's out there that's young, that's available? The Mets decided, okay, we'll buy these guys. They're both 40 years old, Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. Didn't work out. They're both gone. How many guys who are number one starter quality are available? Maybe a team that has had a run and is looking to rebuild. Maybe that's the case. But, I think they're more rare than great starting quarterbacks. They might be. And you got to have, 4 really good ones. In the NFL, you just need one really good one. In Major League Baseball, you need 4 and a fifth who can step in. And at times, this is what the Nationals built their team on. They had that. The Orioles don't have that. They got some really good position players. They had great work out of the bullpen with some luck, Felix Bautista was a discard and wound up going to the All-Star game. So, a lot of things have to fall in place for your team to do what the Orioles did, and they did benefit from some luck. Now the question is, will they spend some money? Will they make the deals that they need to make to take it to the next level? I'll have to see. One thing you may have missed from last night with, everything going on. We got hockey starting up. Capitals get going tonight. The Wizards played an exhibition game. And, of course, the baseball playoffs, what everybody is focused on. And we even had Thursday night football, such as it was, with Denver once again losing to Kansas City. But there was a college football game going on. It was going on in Houston and probably didn't get a lot of attention other than in the two places, the two cities that had their schools in it. It was West Virginia playing at Houston. And this is a wild finish. And I don't know how many people were still around for the finish. But in the fourth quarter, West Virginia's down 35-24. They cut the lead to 3 on an 8-yard touchdown run and a 2-point conversion. Then Houston is forced to punt, and West Virginia gets a 50-yard touchdown pass on 4th and 10. So they got a 4-point lead with 12 seconds to go. 12 seconds left. That's it. And what happens? Donovan Smith throws a 49-yard Hail Mary caught by Steven Johnson as time expires. Houston wins 41-39. There were 42 points scored in the fourth quarter between the two teams, including a Hail Mary and including a 50-yard touchdown pass on 4th and 12. The college football that I grew up with, Archie Griffin, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, that's long gone. That does not exist anymore. I don't know if there's a team in America that relies on its running game. I really don't. I think it's become 7-on-7 passing. And it's, it's spilled over to the NFL because the NFL, they throw more than ever. In fact, we'll get to what's going on with Eric Bieniemy and the numbers that he's ringing up this year as the offensive coordinator for a team that throws pretty much on every down, 55 straight in last week's loss. But in college football, it's like this. It's crazy. And you tell your players, be disciplined. The one thing you can't do is you can't give up the touchdown. Give up the touchdown, and not just the Hail Mary, but the 4th and 10 TD with time running out. Crazy. Coming up next, we'll talk about more about the Commanders as they head into Atlanta this weekend. Also about the death of Walt Garrison, one of the key figures in one of the most important plays in the history of the Washington football team history. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. We got Tony coming up at 11 o'clock. Ravens preview at 10:30. Ravens in London to play Tennessee, and we'll be joined by Kevin Osteicher, who covers the Ravens for Ravens Wire and Hooked on Ravens as they try to get back on track after an ugly loss last week at Pittsburgh. Another game, second one this year that they had in hand, seemed to be able to put away, couldn't do it, and wound up losing. So they'll try to get right in London, and we'll preview that. Also, I was just looking through the schedule for the weekend, and the Patriots are playing at Vegas. The Raiders are favored by 2.5 at home. And after what's happened to the Patriots the last 2 weeks, losing to Dallas 35-3 and then losing at home to New Orleans 34-0, if there is another game like this, do you rule out the possibility that Bob Kraft fires him next week? I mean, it seems like it won't happen, but how much longer can this go on? And if it does happen, there'll be people who look at it and go, oh, my God. But I don't know how much sympathy Bill Belichick is going to get. Some coaches, especially legendary ones, they build up goodwill through the media. He's built up no goodwill. So if he were to go on a public relations tour to say how he got screwed after delivering 6 Lombardis, I don't know how much sympathy he'd get. And the fan base, they're probably ready to move on. They've seen the show now without Tom Brady for now 4 years. And so, it's like you reap what you sow. And had you done a little bit more than just grumble and mumble at the media for 24 years, maybe you get a little bit more sympathy here. And I'm not, it's, even if they do have another, 35-3 type of game, I think it's still remote that he gets fired. But if he does, I was just thinking, hey, sorry, Bill, you want to now give a lengthy explanation to defend yourself? You want to now go on to the various, shows like Dan Patrick and Colin Cowherd and say you got a raw deal here? I don't know. I mean, they take you. You'd be a welcome guest. But as far as public sympathy and sympathy in the media, no, I don't think so. You want to treat the media like that. You want to treat us, like you're a canker sore. We're a canker sore. Forget it. Forget about it. Walt Garrison passed away the other day. He was 79 years old. And Walt Garrison last played in the NFL in 1974. So it's been roughly 50 years since anybody saw him on the field. But if you did, you probably don't really remember much about him. He was a Pro Bowl running back at one time. He's 4th on Dallas's all-time rushing list at 4.3 yards a carry. He retired as the number 3 rusher of all time on the team with 3,400 yards. But he was not, a spectacular runner in any way. He was a tough guy. He was a fullback, really. I mean, they used to have 2 guys in the backfield, and he did a lot of blocking for guys like Calvin Hill. But he didn't carry the ball, like a number 1 running back. Didn't get 25 carries a game or anything like that. But the way he stood out was he was an actual cowboy. He had grown up in Texas, participating in rodeos, went to Oklahoma State, and did both rodeo and football, and was drafted in the 5th round by the Cowboys. And in his rookie season, he wasn't playing very much. So after the team meetings, he would go out and compete in rodeos and get back before the 11 o'clock curfew. And he said, look, I wasn't starting. I was returning punts and kicks and covering on the kamikaze squad. That's all I was doing. And hell, you get hurt worse on them than you can rodeoing. So I didn't think much of it. But Tom Landry, he did. He didn't like that. And he said, no, you're going to have to do that just in the off season, and said there was a clause in his contract that if he got hurt doing another sport, that they would void the contract. And he said, "Oh, okay. Well, I didn't think rodeo was that dangerous." Well, obviously it is, and he tore up his knee in 1975 while steer wrestling, and that ended his NFL career. He was 30 years old, but it wasn't a big deal because he jumped right into rodeo, and he had a really lucrative deal, I guess, for the time, endorsing Skoal tobacco. In those days, you could advertise smokeless tobacco on television. They stopped cigarette advertising like 70, 71. So by the mid-70s, it was still okay to do smokeless tobacco. Now they've found out that that can give you skin cancer, and Tony Gwynn had an addiction to it and eventually took his life because of it. So they don't do that anymore. But he was the guy who said, put a pinch between your cheek and gum. But in terms of his local importance, it goes back, and he died almost exactly 50 years after this play. This was October 8th of 1973. And here in Washington, we were at the height of the I like Billy, I like Sonny craze. There were bumper stickers on cars, and you were picking the quarterback that you liked. Now, Sonny is a Hall of Famer, and he came here in 1964, and he is, I think, the second best quarterback in the history of the franchise, and he's a Hall of Famer. Sammy Baugh is the best, but Sonny was great, and he was a great passer, and he was a fan favorite, and he did television and radio here for a long, long time. He's now retired, living in Florida. But in 1973, the Redskins were coming off the Super Bowl. They had lost, but Billy Kilmer had taken them there. So people had allegiance to Billy, and they had I like Billy bumper stickers, and there were I like Sonny bumper stickers, and it was big debate on talk radio, such as it was. I remember listening as I did my homework to Shelby Whitfield on WWDC. He was a Billy guy. I was a Sonny guy, and I used to yell at the radio when he would talk about it. But anyway, at this point in the season, Sonny was the starting quarterback. And you'd think with Sonny, well, you're going to score points, right? Sonny was a great passer. Back in the day when they had no defense, he would sometimes throw 4 touchdown passes, and they would lose. So, you figure he's going to put some points up on Monday Night Football against the Cowboys. Well, didn't go very well. They're going into the fourth quarter, and the Cowboys are leading 7-0. Now, this is now, I guess, Roger Staubach is hurt, so Craig Morton is the quarterback. And Cowboys up 7-0. There's like a minute and a half to go when they get the ball, and looks like they might be able to run out the clock. But no, doesn't work that way. What happened was, first of all, Sonny had thrown a touchdown pass early in the fourth quarter, so it's now 7-7. So now it's 7-7, Cowboys with the ball, and they're trying to drive downfield and set up a field goal. That's right, to win the game. So Craig Morton goes back to throw, and there's a 26-yard pick six by Brig Owens. So now Washington is up 14-7, and there's only a minute left. And it's enough for the Cowboys to get down the field. And they now have the ball at the 4-yard line. 4-yard line with an attempt to tie up the game. There's no 2-point conversion there in those days, so there's no debate if they score what they're going to do. They could send the game into overtime. No, they couldn't. As a matter of fact, they could not, because in 1973, overtime hadn't come in. That didn't come in until 74. So they're attempting to tie the game, and a tie against the Cowboys really sucks. Nobody wants that. So now it's seconds left on the clock. The Cowboys have the ball at Washington's 4-yard line. Morton is the quarterback. Garrison is in the game. And this is what was done a number of years ago. Bernie Shaw has since passed away. But Bernie Shaw narrated the history of the team, I guess, when they were celebrating their 75th anniversary, something like that. And they covered this play. And so what you'll hear is Ken Houston reacting to what happened, and also Charlie Taylor, who has since passed away, talking about what Ken Houston did. This was the play at the end of that game on Monday Night Football, October 8th, 1973.
Morton came back quickly, driving the Cowboys downfield.
And it was 4th and 4 on the 4.
With 29 seconds left, he went to his meanest receiver.
It was a swing pass. It was, and Brig Owens and I had what we call combo coverage. I thought that I could intercept the ball, and I actually overran the play. There was Walt Garrison. He was a bulldog. He rode, bulls and stuff like that. It was dead silent. And I remember calling for Brig to come and help me. And I caught him and I wouldn't let him put his feet down.
Kenny was strong and he was vicious. So when I seen him actually get his hands around Garrison, I knew it was all over.
It seemed like a lifetime, but probably in about 5 or 10 seconds, you could hear the stadium coming back alive. I mean, it was like a staccato effect.
But that was a great play. Kenny, I love you for that, man.
Yeah, the irony of that is Walt Garrison, who wrestled bulls to the ground on rodeos, got wrestled to the ground the same way that he would wrestle the bulls to the ground. And Kenny Houston, who was a Hall of Fame safety, George Allen traded 5 players to get him that season. They were coming off the Super Bowl, and he thought he needed help in the secondary, so he traded 5 players to the Oilers to get him, and Houston finished up his career here, but there was no play that was bigger than that one, and that is the signature play of his career and what we remember Walt Garrison by. So rest in peace, Walt Garrison. Met him a couple of times. Good guy, really good guy, and was, in fact, not just a Dallas Cowboy, but a real Cowboy. All right, to the Commanders and what is now a pass-happy offense. The numbers show that they are number 2 in the league in pass-to-run ratio, right behind Minnesota, which is number 1 at 70%, Washington 68%. Both of them losing teams. Minnesota's 1-4, and the Commanders are 2-3. And Eric Bieniemy is a former running back. You'd think maybe with his first chance to call plays in the NFL, he'd be a little bit more open to running the ball. They got a good running attack with Brian Robinson. You want to see the ball in his hands a little bit more? Nope. They're throwing the ball, partly because they're falling behind, but in the Chicago game last week, they threw the ball 55 times. And they've been throwing the ball throughout the season, and that means that Sam Howell has really taken a beating. He leads the NFL in sacks taken, 29, and quarterback hits, 50, which is on pace to smash the high mark of the last decade, set by, who else? Kirk Cousins, 131. Howell has also turned the ball over 7 times, tied for second most in the league, and 6 of them have come either in the red zone or inside the Washington 35-yard line. Here is Bieniemy, Eric Bieniemy yesterday, with his outlook on what has happened here with Sam Howell and what the reason is for it.
You would love to keep the quarterback clean. Obviously, this is a professional football league. Sometimes things happen. And I'll say this, sometimes without no bad luck, we wouldn't have any good luck. The beauty of it is I think all of this that has happened is helping us to grow together. The thing that I'm finding is the communication level between players, okay? Also with coaches, I can see the growth process. And one thing that you learn, and I've shared this before, and I was just telling our players this, is communication is the key to any successful relationship. I like where we are because I can see our guys doing a much better job of over-communicating at the line of scrimmage. I can hear them in the background communicating, making all the necessary calls. So, yes, would we like to be better? Yes. Would we like to keep him clean? Yes. Okay? But for whatever reason, that has brought us to this place, and it's making us a much better team.
I think you can do a drinking game with Bieniemy and make sure, listen here. So I've got a couple more of what he said yesterday. This is on how playing at the end of these blowouts. He's taken every offensive snap this year, including in games that were well out of hand against Buffalo and Chicago. And this is Bieniemy's reason for leaving him in there.
When I was a young player, I wanted every opportunity to gain as much experience as possible. So being a former player, I know how players think. And so players don't want to ever be pulled. So the thing that I'm looking at is just giving Sam an opportunity to learn how to grow and play through the good and as well as the bad. This is why we are a team. You can grow. You can learn things from those experiences. So when it's all said and done with, this is a part of the process that we're supposed to have at this current moment.
Maybe, but there's been some criticism, some pushback from his own team. Charles Leno, after the game, you questioned why you would keep him in there. Not just he's playing, not that he's just trying to run out the clock, but he's back there throwing the football. The last 55 snaps that Sam Howell took were passing plays. And, that you subject yourself to more hits on that. And the kid has played 5 games this year. Is he going to last another dozen games playing this way. Here's Bieniemy on defending what he's been doing and why you would throw the ball 55 times consecutively in one game.
You want to do everything under the sun to win. I think Andy Reid would be proud of me that we threw it 55, or how many times was it?
55.
I think he would probably be sitting up there like, yeah, EB, I see you. Once upon a time, you asked for 25, 30 carries for Jamal Charles. Now you're slinging it around the park. But, I mean, you try and give your guys the best opportunity to go win. And, no, you never want to come into a game and say we're going to throw it 55 straight times. But at that particular time, I felt that was what was needed. I felt that was what was needed to give us a boost. And throughout that, I thought our guys played their tails off. There's just a few plays that if I woulda, shoulda, coulda, no telling what happens. But the thing that we're learning is we can't take those moments for granted, okay? We're also learning what the term accountability means. These guys have heard me say this over and over and over again, that indirectly we all impact each other's lives. So we got to make sure that we're doing all the little detailed things that are necessary that can help us to have the success that we need to have. And it's not just about studying and being a bookworm. It's about how you're taking care of your body, making sure that you got the right habits at home, getting the amount of rest. And then when you're coming into this building, I'm coming into this building with the right attitude and the right mindset, okay? And then understanding that collectively that, throughout the course of a game, you may be called upon 3 times to be great, okay? The question is, as you watch and you go through that process, is have you prepared yourself mentally and physically to be great for those defining moments? And I think our guys saw that in true form in this game. And the thing is these guys are understanding I have to do my part. Collectively, we're understanding I have to do my part. Individually, we're learning I have to do my part. Because if I do my part, I'm giving us a chance to have a chance. And so this is where we are, okay? Nobody wants to be 2-3, but I'm sitting here telling you that everything now is looking up because the growth process for us has been great because we're growing together. We're learning together. We're learning about each other.
You mentioned the learning. Can you give us one specific concrete example of something you've learned throughout this first stretch?
Okay. I've learned this. Losing gets on my damn nerves. And I'm being serious. In order to appreciate winning, you have to despise losing. I despise it. So it's my job to make sure that we don't have to go through these emotions. And how do I conquer that? I got to make sure that I'm doing everything under the sun to making sure that we don't go through these experiences, making sure that our coaches are armed with the right information. On top of that, just making sure if there's anything that I can go back and plan it a different way, what would I do? So it's helping me to basically reevaluate everything. That's what I'm learning, how to reassess self. Okay, thank you, guys.
And thank you, and drive home safely. I would say this, if somebody wants to print up a T-shirt with Eric Bieniemy's picture on it and the words "Make Sure," it might be a pretty good seller. Again, this comes from watching almost all of his news conferences. And I feel like when he's talking to the media, it's a little bit like talking to his players without some of the expletives. That seems to be, if you want to know the way he coaches, you probably can get a pretty good idea of listening to the news conferences because they're probably representative of the way he talks to his players. He's very, very clear on things. He's very, very passionate about what he says, and the message is drilled in over and over and over again. And he's very supportive. Like he won't He won't rip a player, and most coaches won't, but you won't hear him criticize anybody. And he always says, he's doing a great job. He's doing a great job. But you want to, I think, achieve a little bit more balance than they have so far. And, it's really been a pass-happy offense, which you really wouldn't expect, especially for this team. It's not like you've got Patrick Mahomes and Jason Kelce. It's not Jason Kelce. Not Jason. It's the other one. What's the name? Whatever.
Travis.
Why did I get him mixed up? Yeah, Jason is the center for the Eagles. You don't want to throw passes to him. You want to throw them to Travis Kelce. Anyway, this is more from the story that Sam Fortier wrote in the Post about this, about the run-to-pass ratio, and he says, Bieniemy will probably continue to pass a lot no matter the score. In the first 3 quarters of the blowout loss to Buffalo in Week 3, before the game got out of hand, he called only 12 runs in 37 plays, despite averaging 8.1 yards per carry. Afterwards, he said it was because he trusted the pass-heavy plan the staff had developed. Well, he's probably still learning on the job, and the other thing is, like I say, he's coming here. They're great receivers here, no question about it. They got 3 really top-notch receivers, but they're not using them very well because of all the incompletions and all the sacks that Sam Howell is taking. On top of that, you've got an effective running game. I mean, I'd like to see Brian Robinson get 20 carries in a game. I think that would be helpful. Antonio Gibson catching passes out of the backfield. The game that they were able to come from behind and win. Now, granted, Denver's defense stinks, but they managed to get back and win that game with screen passes to Brian Robinson because they were running the ball effectively. In these other games, he gets away from it, I think, a little bit too quickly, and that's a learning curve. I don't know if it's the same thing, but this is what happened with Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs comes to Washington in 1981, and he's taking over a team that now John Riggins had sat out 1980, so they were not the team that they would become in 1982 with Riggins, but it was still a team that was based on running the football. George Allen was a defensive coach, and he wanted his defense to win the game, and he wanted his offense to eat up clock, kind of like what Bill Parcells did with the Giants, shorten the game, rely on your defense, and use up the clock with your running game. And so that carried over into Jack Pardee, who was also a defensive coach. So the team that Joe Gibbs inherited had been put together to be a run-oriented team. And they had Joe Washington in his first year. He was the feature back. When he brought Riggins back, he was still more of a blocking back that first year. He ran the ball, sure, but did not become the horse that he would become in the 3 seasons after that. And so Gibbs came in with Air Coryell and figured he was going to run that. And they were leading the league in offense the first 5 weeks of the season when they went 0-5. And that's when Gibbs made the most important move of his career. He looked at his team and he looked at his offense and he said, they don't match up. And that's when they became a run-oriented team. They won 5 of their last 8 games. They finished the year 8-8 on the season. They just completely turned things around after 0-5 because he saw his talent didn't match his offense. Is that maybe what Bieniemy is going through right now? I mean, as he said, Andy Reid would be proud of me. Yeah, well, Andy Reid has been able to put together Super Bowl talent and maybe certainly the best quarterback in the game right now, and one of the quarterbacks who may wind up in the Hall of Fame in Patrick Mahomes has already got 2 rings. That's different. And so Bieniemy may have to reassess things and say, we need to do this. Plus, help out the defense a little bit. Defense is really struggling. Emmanuel Forbes now benched, and they're not playing any of the rookies because, well, maybe they didn't draft very well, but some of them are on defense, and it's not working out too well. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens on Sunday. They have a team that they're probably very similar to, and they've got some terrific running backs as well. Bijan Robinson was their first-round pick. They took him high in the first round, and he's a guy who can catch passes as well. And maybe they need to be running an offense that's similar to what Atlanta is doing. Not that they're tearing up the league, but they're 3-2, and they got a second-year quarterback in Desmond Ridder. And what we're seeing now is, I don't think what we expected from a former running back in the league, but yes, someone who fell off the Andy Reid tree, and right now has got a quarterback who's been sacked more than any other in the league.